I haven't done an update in about 4.5 months, so I'm going to split this up. Today we're just looking at horror pickups. And this is the only DVD I've picked up, the Shameless fan edition of Amsterdam. I've got a little bit behind with my Shameless collection. I've been waiting for them to come down in price and they haven't really dropped that much, so I'm just going to sort of pick one up every now and then. So Amsterdam is kind of like a giallo, but instead of being Italian, it's Dutch. And instead of your normal maniac, this one features a diver who floats around in the canals of Amsterdam, and every now and then he'll pop up and slaughter somebody. I wasn't expecting much from this, but I actually really enjoyed it. This was made in the late 80s, and although it's a horror film, it does feature some great action scenes as well. In particular, there's a superb speedboat chase through the canals of Amsterdam. Although the villain is silent throughout the whole film, he's got a great presence and it's such a unique idea. It almost has that don't go in the water feel that you get from something like Jaws. This is one I would definitely recommend. Next up we have The Monster Club, and I had never seen this one before. This is from 1981 and it kind of feels like something Hammer might have made had they kept going into the 80s. This one stars Vincent Price as a vampire who meets up with John Carradine, who is a horror author, and then for some reason he decides to become friends with him and takes him to this club, the Monster Club. And while they're at the Monster Club, Vincent Price tells him 3 different stories that might give him some inspiration. So that forms the framework for what is essentially an anthology horror film. I was a bit surprised by this Blu-ray because it looks like a cheap release, but the quality is actually really nice. Next up we have Bram Stoker's Dracula from Francis Ford Coppola. So I hadn't seen this since back in the VHS days, and I remember it being a bit crap. I've got to say it hasn't really aged well. Gary Oldman's absolutely hamming it up as Dracula, but what I had forgotten is this stars Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, and watching them two in this film is like banging 2 planks of wood together. The special effects look really dated, and I cannot believe this won 3 Academy Awards. Next we have a more modern take on Dracula. This is Dracula Untold, starring Luke Evans. I wasn't expecting much from this. I saw the trailer in the cinema and there's nothing in the film really that isn't shown in the trailer. It is an interesting take on the Dracula story though, who only becomes a vampire to save his people. There's nothing really scary in this, it's more of an action movie, but I did quite enjoy it. This one is a very recent pickup and as such I haven't actually seen it yet. This is World War Z, or is it Z? Brad Pitt facing the zombie apocalypse? I've heard good things about this one, so I'm optimistic. Next up, Australian horror with Wolf Creek 2. So the first Wolf Creek I thought was fantastic. I absolutely love the character of Mick Taylor, the demented Crocodile Dundee. The whole spin on the "that's not a knife" scene from the first movie, that was great. So I've been looking forward to seeing the sequel and I was kind of expecting more of the same. And it's actually quite different. Mick Taylor's now become more of a legendary movie killer, and he is absolutely the highlight of this film. The character is so good. And the story doesn't go quite where you expect it. It's more of a battle of wits between him and his prey. And apparently there's going to be a Wolf Creek 3 and a Wolf Creek TV series. But if you've not seen any of the Wolf Creek films, definitely check them out because they're great. Sticking with Australian horror, Wormwood, Road of the Dead. I've seen this movie recommended in loads of different places, so I thought I've got to check this one out. I do think Mad Max meets Dawn of the Dead is a little bit misleading. There's a lot of Dawn of the Dead and not much Mad Max. That guy in the front there, he's the main hero, and when the zombie apocalypse starts he teams up with this really funny Aborigine guy. And they meet up with a couple of other guys, and they build this really cool car. One of the things that's happened is petrol is no longer flammable, but zombie blood is. So they convert the car to run on zombies. Meanwhile, this guy's sister's being kidnapped by this lunatic doctor who's doing experiments on her. So they've got to go through the zombies to go and try and rescue this guy's sister. This was a really good movie. It's very gory, but there's loads of humour in it too. Next up we have the Larry Cohen cult classic, Q, the Winged Serpent. This one I remember first seeing back on Moviedrome in the early 90s. I had it on VHS, I had it on DVD, and now I'm upgrading to Blu-ray. This is the Shout Factory release and it's super cheap at the moment. There's not much in the way of extras other than an audio commentary. So yeah, Q the Winged Serpent, check it out. And next we have a Scream Factory release. This is The Burning. I've been after this one for ages and I finally decided to take the plunge and order it from the States. I was very surprised to see this one came with a slipcover. because normally you don't get the slipcover if you don't buy them early on. So this is an early 80s summer camp slasher movie in the vein of your Friday the 13th. This time the killer is Cropsey and his weapon of choice is gardening shears. As early 80s slashers goes, this one is one of the better ones, and it's quite surprising this doesn't have a ton of sequels. The movie features some early appearances by what would become Hollywood stars. Fisher Stevens is in there and he's dead young and skinny. Helen Hunt is apparently in there, but I didn't see her at all. And although she never became a Hollywood star, the leading lady in this actually turned up later in Bloodsport. Which was a bit of a coincidence because I just picked that one up as well. And as coincidences goes, this was directed by Tony Maylam, and the only other notable film that he made was Split Second, which will also appear in one of the following updates. Also of note, this is one of the first films by the Weinstein brothers, who would go on to be Miramax films. So if you like 80s slashers, this one's pretty decent. And so we come to Arrow Video, and there was a sale on with Arrow recently, so I picked up quite a few of their titles. This one I nearly picked up a few years back when Blue Underground released it. This is a nasty horror film about witchcraft from the late 60s, and at the time it was released, you were given a little vomit bag when you went into the cinema. And the music for this reminded me totally of the score for Cannibal Holocaust, although this came years before that. Obviously being an Arrow release, this has got tons of special features, audio commentary, interviews, reversible cover, everything you'd expect from Arrow. This is a solid release of a mean little horror film. Next up we have The Beast Within. This is an 80s werewolf movie. I haven't got around to watching this one yet. The only thing I know about it is it stars Ronnie Cox, who you may remember from RoboCop and Beverly Hills Cop, Deliverance. And it reckons it has werewolf transformation scenes to rival American Werewolf in London and The Howling. As you'd expect, tons of special features on this one, and this was directed by Philip Mora. He's an Australian director, and one of his earlier films was Mad Dog Morgan, which the making of is legendary due to Dennis Hopper's drunken antics. But after this, he went on to make The Howling 2, which was nuts, and The Howling 3, The Marsupials. Next we have another cult classic, Night of the Comet. This one's from the early 80s, and basically a comet comes too close to Earth, evaporates most people into dust. Those who do survive turn into these zombie creatures, and the rest of the story is about a couple of kids trying to survive the aftermath. This one stars Catherine Mary Stewart and Robert Beltran, who you may know as Chakotay from Star Trek Voyager. This one started really good and then kind of lost its way about halfway through. Next up we have The Visitor, and I haven't got around to watching this one yet, so I don't know what it's about. Something about this girl has a pet hawk and there's exploding basketballs. Sam Peckinpah's in it, Lance Henriksen's in it, John Huston, Shelley Winters, some kind of sci-fi possession movie. Next up we have a very strange film from Mario Bava. If you're familiar with Mario Bava's gothic masterpieces, this is something else entirely. At first glance this looks like a really grimy 70s exploitation film. And it kind of is, which is very weird for Mario Bava. It's like he wanted to push the boundaries and try some other type of film. And what's also strange is it's actually done in real time, which for a low-budget Italian movie you just never see. So this is actually an upgrade from my old DVD that came in the Bava box set, and I absolutely loved this film when I first saw it. Originally this was made in the mid-70s, but then it was shelved for like 20 odd years. And then we end up with two versions of it. One of them's got extra scenes added in, the other version was finished by Mario Bava's son Lamberto, and this 3-disc set has both versions on there. Loads of great extras talking about what happened to the film for the missing 20 years. This is nothing like Mario Bava's other films, but I did enjoy it. It's basically the story of a heist that goes wrong and the three crooks go on the run and kidnap this young innocent girl. And by far the star of the show is George Eastman. He's in loads of Italian movies, that's him on the left there. Cracking movie this one, Rabid Dogs. Next we move to a relatively new company, 88 Films. So this is the first in their Slasher Classics collection. Numbered horror classics in a nice red case. Well, you've got to collect them all, haven't you? And these are pretty cheap. This one is really good on extras. It has a feature-length documentary about the Scream Queens. The film Graduation Day, though, it was never that great. I had it on DVD and it was a horrible Prism full-screen thing. This one, at least it's in widescreen, and it's a lot better than the DVD. Next we have number 2 in the Slasher Classics collection, Mother's Day. So I wasn't expecting much from this. This was brilliant. So there's these two maniacs, and they go out kidnapping. The real boss of their gang is their mum. The humour in this is really twisted. It's so sick, but it's funny as hell. Absolute top recommendation on this one, Mother's Day. And then we come to number 3 in the Slasher Classics collection, Don't Go in the Woods. Or is it Don't Go in the Woods Alone? This one is a real low budget slasher. And I've got to say the first 3/4 of an hour, it wasn't very good. But once we finally meet the character who's doing the killings, he's actually quite funny. And the film perks up at that point. It's not really a film I'd recommend, but the last half just about saved it. And next we have number 5 in the Slasher Classics collection, Slaughterhouse. I love the tagline on this. Buddy has an axe to grind. A big axe. I've heard this has a very nasty pig slaughtering scene at the beginning. Next we have a very odd choice for the Slasher Classics collection. This is number 8, Dead of Winter. So this has proper actors, Mary Steenburgen and Roddy McDowall, and a proper Hollywood director, Arthur Penn. Arthur Penn made Bonnie and Clyde, he made Little Big Man, The Missouri Breaks, and right after this movie, he made Penn and Teller Get Killed, and he's worked in TV ever since. So I'm wondering, did this film kill his career? Next up we have number 9, which is X-Ray, also known as Hospital Massacre. This one stars Playboy Bunny Barbie Benton, and is basically a mad killer running amok in a hospital movie. Interestingly though, this one's actually made by Cannon Films, which is always good, and the director of this was Bose Davidson, who went on to be the producer in The Expendables. And the final Slasher Classics collection, number 10, The Bogeyman. The main premise for this one revolves around an evil spirit that's trapped inside a mirror. I first heard of this one years and years and years ago, and I'd always got the feeling it was a bit crap. But when I watched it, I was pleasantly surprised. This was a pretty decent slasher movie, The Bogeyman. So 88 Films have also been doing these, the Italian collection. This one, Night Train Murders, directed by Aldo Ledo, was one of the first DVDs I picked up from Shameless. And although this is an upgrade, I'm still going to keep my Shameless edition. This one is basically Last House on the Left on a train. Basically 2 girls on a train get terrorised by these guys, and then one of the girls' parents finds out and comes out for revenge. It's grisly, but it's not as sick as Last House. Next we have number 5 in the Italian collection. They seem to be releasing these in a weird order. Zombie Holocaust, also known as Dr. Butcher MD. What we have here is the bastard son of Cannibal Holocaust and Zombie Flesh Eaters. On the box it says directed by Frank Martin. That's actually a pseudonym for Marino Girolami, and he was the father of Enzo G. Castellari, who you may know from The Bronx Warriors and Inglourious Bastards. He was one of the top Italian exploitation directors. This one also ties in with Zombie Flesh Eaters in that it also stars Ian McCulloch. So this film is pretty awful, but there's a great extra on this. There's a feature-length documentary about the cannibal genre, going right back to the arguments of who made the first one, and it follows the cycle through where each director was just trying to top the previous one. And next we have the Italian collection, number 6. This is A Blade in the Dark, directed by Lamberto Bava. So this was an upgrade of my old Vipco DVD, and I hadn't seen this film since I got that. I rewatched it and it's actually better than I remember it. It's really difficult to follow what's going on, and it's quite slow. And it's one of those films where just when you think you've got it all sussed out, no, you didn't. So yeah, it's kind of a long haul, this one, but the ending was definitely worth it. Unfortunately, the quality on the transfer isn't great. It's not much of an improvement from the old DVD. But on the plus side, it does have a pretty good 50-minute interview with Lamberto Bava, which, to be honest, looks like a YouTube video. It looks like it's been done on somebody's phone, but it's watchable, and Lamberto Bava's pretty entertaining. Next we have a pretty nice upgrade from a really crappy old DVD, The Toxic Avenger Part 3. This one I haven't seen in so many years, I can't remember a thing about it. I do love the fact that it comes in a toxic green case. And as you can see, it comes with tons of special features. So I'm working my way through the Toxie movies. Unfortunately, the second one hasn't actually arrived yet, so I'm a bit stuck until that turns up. But yet again, another solid release from 88 Films. And then we come to Citizen Toxie, The Toxic Avenger Part 4. This one I've definitely not seen before. From what I can gather, this is Toxie versus Noxie. This one was made many years after the originals, and again it comes in a toxic green case. And like part 3, absolutely stacks of special features. And then we have the original Toxic Avenger. And this one I decided to pick up the steelbook version. They've only done a steelbook for part 1, and you can also get it in the toxic green case. But this one is only half the price, and it's got all the same content. And like all the other releases, it's got tons of special features, including the alternate Japanese cut, which runs a little bit longer, but it's only in standard definition. I remember seeing the boxes for the Toxic Avenger movies back when I was a kid in the video store. I think it was part 2, had this really cool embossed plastic cover. But I was never allowed to see them because these were 18s and I was only a kid. Next up we have possibly one of the classiest steelbooks ever made. This is Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace. Mario Bava was a master of colour, and this has got to be one of the best transfers I've ever seen of any of his films. Apart from the fashions, it looks like it was just made yesterday. And the special features count on this is just insane. And I've taken this out the case so you can see just how cool this is. If I turn it around slightly, you can see the title there. That's a really cool effect. And inside it's fully printed, and we get a nice little booklet showing you the alternate cover art. Next up, Arrow's steelbook release of Shivers. This is an early David Cronenberg film, and it's really creepy. It has these little worm parasite things, and to this day it just grosses me out. This is a really early Cronenberg film when he was still based out of Canada, and there was a big uproar at the time because this was funded with taxpayers' money. There's some great extras on here, including documentaries. There's even an episode of On Screen, which is a Canadian TV programme, which takes a look at the production of Shivers. There's a pretty decent video essay that looks at Cronenberg's films up to the early 80s. This is a really nice release, and it's probably a little bit better than the film deserves. And to go with that, we've got the steelbook release of David Cronenberg's Rabid. This is the film he made straight after Shivers. And this is probably one of my favourite Cronenberg movies. It's also one of the earliest that I ever saw. Outside of seeing The Fly, this is pretty much where I started with Cronenberg's movies. Way back in the day, I used to have this on VHS. I think I was still at school at the time. And I really do like the fact that they used the same cover from the old video. And yet again, absolutely stunning array of extras, including 2 audio commentaries. And it even features the director's series on David Cronenberg. They were a series of DVDs out back in the 90s, and I think you could only get them in the States. I have a few of them on DVD. I've got the Wes Craven one, the William Friedkin one, and the Roger Corman one. They were a great little series, so it's good that you get that as a bonus feature. What can I say? A really excellent release if you like David Cronenberg. These are must-buys. So next up in the Cronenberg series we have Arrow's deluxe box set of Videodrome. I'm not the biggest fan of this film, and I nearly didn't pick this up, but I'm glad I did because this sold out in less than a week. This has only been out for 2 weeks, and the price is nearly tripled on Amazon. Quite frankly, this is probably one of the nicest box sets Arrow have ever made. If we take a closer look, you can see this is a really big box set. It's nice and hard cardboard. Ridiculous amount of extras, and it comes with, let's open it all up. This is the Videodrome. Comes on DVD and Blu-ray. Then you've got, this is what I bought it for, the early works of Cronenberg. So you've got 2 shorts and 2, I think they're about an hour long movies that he made before he did Shivers. And again we get them on DVD and Blu-ray. And on top of that we get this little book, Long Live the New Flesh. And it's not a leaflet, it's actually a hardback. We'll just have a quick look in there, you can see just how thick this is. Loads of great stuff about the movie. It's a shame they made this so limited. To sell out in less than a week, that's going to leave a lot of collectors really pissed off. And finally for tonight we have the Arrow box set of Society. This is one I missed, and just like Videodrome, this sold out really quickly and became stupidly expensive. However, this has just been released in the US, and if you check on Amazon.com, this is $25. I don't like getting box sets from the US because they usually get battered, so I thought I'd take a chance at that price. It came with a slight little ding in the top, you can barely see it. Other than that, it's unscathed. This is a really Nice embossed cover. It's got the card on the back there, you can see all the extras. And this is just a really creepy looking cover. The film is actually nothing like what you can see here until the last sort of 20 minutes. It's actually a really good 80s movie. The kid in this is played by Billy Warlock, and he is the son of a famous stuntman called Dick Warlock, who was the Michael Myers in part 2 of Halloween, and he was also Kurt Russell's stunt double. But Billy Warlock in this, he totally reminds me of Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. He even drives that cool black Jeep. So this is kind of a horror film, but it's got a lot of comedy elements too. And as you can see, more of the same gross artwork. And inside there we get the DVD and Blu-ray version. And we've got a postcard with an invite on the back. And then we've got a little booklet showing you some of the more gross scenes. Don't really want to see too much of this, it's kind of spoilery. But there is some funny characters like him. That's Butthead. And it also comes with this, which is a big, thick, graphic comic novel, which is actually the sequel to the film, written specially for this. And something I did notice, this is written by someone called Edward Murphy. Is that the same Edward Murphy that was the director of Raw Force? So this version is pretty much identical to the UK version. It's even got region free on the Blu-ray, region free on the DVDs, and it also doesn't have the 18 logo on, which is kind of a bonus. So if you like the look of this, $25 right now on the US version of Amazon. But this is limited, so if you want it, you best be quick. So that's all the horror titles. Next up we're going to take a look at science fiction. Thanks for watching.